Hi everyone, this is Simon Momba. I'm here with two of our specialists here in VMware Cloud Foundation Division in product marketing, and we're going to do some introductions here in a moment. I just want to welcome you to today's webinar. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll go ahead and kick things off for you. Just wanted to welcome you here to the webinar today, and I'll go ahead and bring this up. You should be able to see that okay. So the topic for today, automated self-service delivery and management of infra and app services with VMware Cloud Foundation. So we're joined here with Vincent, Riccio, and Tim George, both product marketing engineers with the VMware Cloud Foundation division in product marketing. So today what you're going to hear is, formerly VMware Aria, now VMware Cloud Foundation Management Operations. You're going to see how this is a unified control plane to deliver, manage, and govern workloads. You'll also be able to see, and Tim's going to do a demonstration for us, how this AI-powered cloud management platform can really deliver a proactive and effective cloud operating model. And of course, with the Vincent's going to kick us off, Tim's going to help us do a demonstration. Really want to show you how you can automate infrastructure and application services and reduce risk across your cloud environments. So really a lot of good content here. Please stay with us. This is being recorded, so we'll make it available on demand for anybody. Please do submit your questions, and either Tim or Vincent will be able to answer those. We'll be leaving some time at the end of the conversation to answer your questions live. Now, before I pass to Vincent, I just want to do some shameless plugs here. This is a webinar series. We're doing this weekly, and we've actually got another one coming up on May 1st through LinkedIn Live. It's a live stream hosted by Pete Fletcher, the economics of the cloud operating model. He has a guest speaker, Drew Nielsen. So he's going to be talking about TCO, ROI as it comes with VMware Cloud Foundation. So a really good one coming up next Wednesday. The Wednesday after that, we have another session, this one hosted by Anders here on this GoTo webinar platform. And this is for those in the healthcare and life sciences field, those industries. So we've got Brianne, we've got Ray Malott, who's going to talk about exploring the value of VMware Cloud Foundation in the healthcare provider market. Now, to get to these webinars, you'll notice in the yellow at the top of the screen here, a link, and I'll share it here again in a moment via vmw.com/VCF webinars. So this is where you can go to register and get to these webinars or get to the live stream. One more to promote for you, Tom Nagelmeyer is coming up May 15th to talk about VMware vSAN Express Storage, both from a business outcomes and from a technical architecture standpoint. So accelerating operations and lowering costs for high performance storage, again, with VMware Cloud Foundation. So again, three really good topics coming up. And just as a reminder, you can go to this QR code, of course, the VCF webinars webpage to see this and many more that we've got coming up. So before I pass, I'm going to stop sharing here in a moment. Before I pass to Vincent and Tim, I thought, Vincent and Tim, if you could quickly introduce yourselves, just a little bit about your role and your background. Vincent, if you'd like to share your story.
Sure, thanks, Simon. I actually started VMware in 2012. I started as just sort of a generalist, supporting a lot of the products. Back then, we didn't have quite as large of a portfolio as we have today. So definitely seen it grow over the years, which has been great. A few years ago, I joined the technical marketing team focused on automation. So for the last few years, even before that, I was doing cloud management specifically for a few years in another role. But I joined the business unit at the time, and I was wholly focused on automation as well as Salt when we purchased that and things like that. So my focus really from a product standpoint is VCF automation capabilities around provisioning, what we're going to talk about today, which is building a self-service private cloud, automating applications and infrastructure, and then the whole day two and all of that. So we'll look at that, and that's really been a big focus of mine actually in the last few years. We've created quite a bit of content around this, and so if you're familiar with automation, what you'll see is some updates we've made. If you're not familiar with it, generally what you're going to see is how we can build out this sort of self-service along with governance policies and infrastructure as code and things like that. So I think that's a little bit of my story. Tim, I'll pass over to you. I think you're muted.
Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
You're right. I certainly was muted. So yeah, I started here at VMware through an acquisition. I was originally at Blue Medora, which was making management packs for Aria operations. Was making management packs, for compute, storage, networking, certain applications. So I've been working with Aria operations for quite some time, and through that acquisition, then joined the technical marketing team, where I also then focus on Aria operations. So what Vincent is talking about as far as your self-service delivery, your catalogs, and all of that deployments you put out there. Of course, once it's already out there, you'll need to then monitor those deployments, and so that's where Aria operations comes in, and so that's what we'll be talking about today from my standpoint.
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. No, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Vincent. I'm going to go
Yeah.
ahead and stop sharing my screen here,
Okay.
and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and pass to you there, Vincent, to go ahead and bring up your screen,
Sharing
and I'll
screen.
let you take it away.
All right. Thank you. Let's see. Okay. Looks like I got the right screen there. All right. So yeah, thanks everyone for jumping on. So I'm going to go through a few slides in the beginning just to create some context. Promise not to spend a ton of time in the slides, but it's usually a little helpful just to kind of get a bit of an update on why we're talking about this and bringing these kind of topics up these days, and just sort of current state of our management strategies and things like that for cloud. So essentially, when we talk to our customers, right, and we start to really look at what a lot of our customers are kind of going through, and we sit down there with them and we talk and we get that feedback, we do hear complexity, right? Having various environments and being able to keep up with the speed of the business these days and is complex, and just the technology sometimes is getting more complex. So how do we sort of reduce some of that complexity and create overcome some roadblocks to getting things out quickly, and then simplifying IT, right, and freeing up IT to do other things through methodologies like X as a service, or being able to provide as a service capabilities to your entire organization, from HR all the way to app teams, things like that. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the demo, and then of course everyone's top of mind on security resiliency, right? How do we recover from failures? How do we react to security breaches and things like that, and how do we get all the information we need, right? So all those things are top of mind for us as we kind of build out and go through this mission, right? So what we're going to focus on today really is that private cloud computing around vCloud Foundation. So with vCloud Foundation, right, we're creating this underlying capability to be able to build this cloud and to build this private cloud for your organization, and then expand it out into a hybrid and more of a broader thing as well if you want. But how do we kind of approach it, right? It's being able to provide application services. We've been doing a lot with that around Kubernetes. We've got a cloud consumption interface now inside of Aria, or inside of VCF automation, that essentially provides sort of a self-service way to spin up Kubernetes clusters and then deploy applications and things like that. So modernizing that private cloud, that cloud experience is important, and of course making it compatible, making all the pieces inside of the Cloud Foundation compatible. That's been one of the big feedbacks from our customers as well, or a big part of the feedback has been, I want everything to work together. I want this tool to talk to this tool, and now we have this opportunity as a VCF division within Broadcom to do that, and bring these things together in a very compatible and integrated way, and then integrated way, right, that we talk about next, and really bringing that IaaS forward, bringing these services, containers as a service and things like that. You're going to see the capabilities of IaaS today within the automation tool to be able to deliver infrastructure and provide governance and costing, and then making it ubiquitous, right? Being able to run it on-prem if you want to run our management layer in a hyperscaler, right? Those sort of things are supported. So what we're going to focus on today is really that top piece, that modern consumption surface, powered by automation and operations, and being able to deliver that IaaS experience, that true cloud experience to your business. And then today, we're going to focus more on this automated delivery section, but then Tim will kind of talk about some of the other areas as well. But if we look at automated delivery, what we're looking at is, being able to just sort of automate not just VMs, but processes, scripts, and all types of things. But for the most part, you're going to want it for workloads and applications, and being able to bring in scripts during certain times of the deployment lifecycle, as well as maybe load balancers or third-party integrations and things like that. So we'll drill in a little bit on this. What I'm going to do in the slides real quick is I'm going to talk a little about each one of these, but I'll try to make it pretty quick. So automated delivery really being that key piece of delivering infrastructure and apps and services, cost and capacity, really, looking at what are the ongoing costs of your deployments, but not only that, having upfront cost transparency even before someone deploys it. But the one thing that we've done in the last few years, which has been pretty nice, is there's an integration actually between the automation and operations tools. And at each layer of the automation components, like projects, deployments, the resources themselves, we can get cost data from our operations management tool at each of those layers. So if you have a project, that's more like your production groups, and you see that, cost is low, but maybe there's other projects where the cost is very high, you can go investigate those things, maybe by using some of the cost and capacity utilization pieces with an operations manager. You might have VMs that are oversized, maybe your deployments are too big, things like that. And then performance and troubleshooting, obviously important as you work with these machines and work with these applications ongoing. How do we get visibility from the app to the OS to the infrastructure layer to the switch, right? All the full stack, and that's where operations manager really comes in handy. And then governance and compliance, right? How do we enforce proper placement of these workloads through various policies and performance policies, and maybe even governance or HIPAA, PCI compliance type of things, as well as ongoing maintenance or movement of those machines based on resources. So when we talk about automated delivery, we really kind of focus on a few areas for the most part. One is self-service cloud. So we're really, we've been in the business for a while with automation to deliver a nice catalog. We even have ServiceNow integration to present that catalog that way. And so, and we provide this role-based access as well as a way for folks to go in and do it all programmatically through the API. So it's really a way for not just self-service in the sense of, hey, I'm gonna necessarily just go do something myself, but to have that experience, role-based experience that with the policies, as well as maybe a nicer UI for folks that aren't maybe as technical. And then also, DevOps for infrastructure, right? This is very key these days to keep up with the speed and agility of application needs and the businesses need. So being able to do things in code, to be able to deploy or manage your deployments in code, to be able to do it declaratively and then iteratively, and all of that kind of stuff. Sorry, someone called me there. And then Kubernetes automation, obviously for more that modern, developer app team focus for actually delivering the applications. From a cost and capacity standpoint, we really assess capacity and look for future trends of capacity issues, as well as the shortfalls, like, hey, you're going to run out of memory in this cluster in a month. Those sort of things, and then how can we reclaim capacity and automate some of that, right? So maybe identifying resources like idle VMs or orphan disks and things like that that could be taking up storage and so forth. And then infrastructure workload planning, creating scenarios, right? Maybe you want to expand out your data center a bit. What's that going to look like? Are you going to are you buying the right amount of hardware for your expansion, right? So you don't overbuy, underbuy, all that kind of stuff. And then TCO, right, for showback and chargeback. When you build a cloud, one of the things you have to think about is really kind of cost and also driving behavior. So sometimes showback and chargeback, even though you may not actually bill your users, sometimes having that cost visibility is helpful just to make sure that that behavior is there, because you don't want people just going in constantly and deploying things over and over again. Now that's where we can also apply policies to limit some of that, and we'll get into that in just a bit. So performance and troubleshooting, full stack visibility, like I mentioned earlier, right, from the app to the top of racks, but everything, right? We want to be able to monitor as much as we can, get it all in one place, see it all. Operations has some great visualizations, scenarios where you can see the whole app all connected to each other, and then on the left hand side you see every little thing that we're monitoring there, and it just gives you that full stack visibility. And along with the workbench, you can really triage and start to look at trends and focus on what's important. And then, of course, application container monitoring. There's agents that we can put on these machines to monitor applications, and there's a lot of valid box dashboards, as well as AI-driven proactive troubleshooting. So the system will look at trends, will look at normal behavior and so forth, and then make decisions and so forth based on that. Governance and compliance being pretty helpful, or important as well. So around regulatory and hardening guideline compliance. So being able to go in and say, okay, out of the SDDC components, which ones are not in conformance with, like, let's say PCI, HIPAA, or other regulatory guidelines. And sustainability. One really cool thing about operations is they put some like green scores and stuff in there around how green is your data center, and what's your carbon footprint look like, and things like that. So really, really great information there, as well as infrastructure reporting. So lots of reporting, lots of ability to get data out of the tool and into the hands of the people that need to see it. So the last thing I want to talk about here as well is just what we've been doing outside of just generally, cloud management, in a sense, is we're also introducing Private AI Foundation with NVIDIA into our tools as well. And the reason why this is highlighted right here is because in our VCF automation tool, we actually have a wizard that you can run through, and it kind of gets all this set up for you. Essentially what it does is it creates two catalog items, one like this, like an AI workstation, will get put into your automation catalog, and essentially then you can deploy this AI workstation that will take advantage of the GPU capabilities of NVIDIA, as well as like doing the stuff with the RAG applications and some of the vector database stuff, and all that's kind of pre-built for you. Kind of done. So it gives you ability to quickly get up and going with private AI development and work like that. So really interesting stuff there. Okay, so I'm going to go over into the demo. I don't know if there's any pressing questions in the chat. Let's see if
no questions submitted as
questions
yet.
yet. Okay, all right. Let me just log into. And how am I doing on time? I think I'm running a little behind, but okay. Let me just try to write this down. Okay, sorry, it kicked me out, so I'm gonna log back in. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so I'm in automation right now. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with the service broker, because that's where we have the catalog. So I'm going to start out generally, with the end result. And the end result could look something like this. We could also present this into, like, let's say, a ServiceNow catalog as well. So if we wanted to, if you have a process in your organization where folks have to go to ServiceNow, let's say, to request stuff, we have a plugin that we publish to the ServiceNow store, and we can present these items up through something like that. Customers sometimes will also, have a front end system already, or they may just use this one as well. But either way, whether it's through the API or through direct UI access, users have capabilities to deploy these and then deploy these items and then take advantage of some of the other capabilities around like policies and governance and costing and all of that. So that's why we sometimes see even it getting incorporated into like ServiceNow because of all the back end work that automation does. Right. So when we go into the catalog, one of the first things you might one of the things you can do, and one of the things I usually bring up is you can have multiple types of things in here. So for instance, most of this in here is going to be items that will deploy stuff through our cloud templates, which are YAML based cloud templates that uh, allow us to deploy workloads and applications. We can publish those here. We can also publish, like, let's say, orchestrator scripts here. Right? And I don't know if I have one in here. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Okay, I probably got to get one in here. But there's we're kind of redoing some of our demo environments right now. So the orchestrator, there's also ability to put orchestrator actions in here, and then you can also put what we call ABX actions. So ABX is an out of the box feature of our product that essentially allows you to write polyglot scripts to handle, let's say, anything as function as a service. So there are serverless scripts that you can run, you can write, and they can either be ad hoc requested from like a catalog here where you just go in, bam, request it and the script runs, or you can make them part of an extensibility structure or a subscription, extensibility subscription service, which we have, which allows you to say, okay, certain times of the deployment, I want to run scripts. So, but for here in this catalog, it would be what we call XaaS or anything as a service. We're putting orchestrator ABX actions in here, and they're running scripts and going and interacting with something somewhere. So the use cases could be like, let's say HR wants to onboard people. They could do that through scripts, right? Or if you want to go out and interact with a third-party system, and you have the scripts to do so, you can put them in here and then add that as a catalog item. The one catalog item I'm going to work with here today for the sake of time is this one right here, because this is VCF and NSX. So essentially what we're doing is we're deploying a shopping cart application. So this will deploy a shopping cart app and allow me to specify some parameters first. Now what's going to happen here is once I submit this, it's going to actually get picked up by operations manager. So this is basically a two-tier app. It's a front-end web server and a back-end database. I'll show you that in the blueprint here in a second if I hurry up. Essentially, it's a two-tier app. So what you'll see in Operations Manager, you'll see all the components. You'll see the apps, you'll see the clusters, and then you'll also see the VMs themselves, obviously, and so forth. So that's what's kind of nice about all this. So if I just give this a name, like my deployment, I can spell today, okay, and then let's put a password in here, and then there's various things we can do with the form. So we can create what we call custom forms. So out of the box, there's just like an out of the box form that takes the inputs and deployment name. And then also, I don't know if there's some background noise, if someone can mute. And then also, what we can do with this is we can, so those with the custom form, we can do things like, dynamic drop downs. We can have conditional drop downs. We can do things like Boolean checks here where we can say, well, this came from the template, but there's a number of things you can do with custom forms like little bubbles and stuff like that. You can make one drop down be conditional on another. So for instance, if I chose cost center operations, then maybe different target environments would show up. Or if I chose, a certain compliance standard, then only certain environments would show up and things like that. And so we can also do agnostic provisioning, meaning that depending upon the location that they choose or the target environment, they may have different options, and the system will place it correctly. So they don't have to specify the image. They may just say, hey, I need an Ubuntu image, if they even are specifying an image, and it will know what image to use depending upon which cloud it goes to. So we do a lot of abstractions underneath to where all they need to do is just say, here's my target environment. The system takes care of the rest to make sure the right deployment, the right image is used, the right cluster is being targeted, and et cetera. The other thing that we get is we get a little bit of upfront cost. So I mentioned earlier in the slides that there's cost visibility up front. cost transparency up front, and then ongoing costing. So when we have our operations manager integration here, we can get a daily price estimate of what this would cost if we were to go ahead and submit this. And so forth. So I'll go ahead and submit this so you can just kind of get an idea, right, of what's happening. So when they submit it, right, they'll see their deployments. This is all role-based access driven, so users will only see things that they are permitted to see. Generally, what they see is deployments and resources inside the catalog that they own. Like they will see their deployments. Now, from a catalog perspective, they will see things that are in the project. We have this concept called the project, and it's sort of a container within, within the system, sort of a construct that allows us to bucket users and policies and where they can actually deploy to. So they will see catalog items that they have permissions to, but they will only usually see their deployments. There are some ways to get around that and share deployments and stuff like that for collaboration, but that's generally out of the box. You know how it works right away. And then you can kind of build and mold how you want your policies to look and what you want people to have access to. Okay, so real quick, let me go ahead here to an actual deployment that we've done. This is actually what I just kicked off. So this is what it would look like, afterwards. So we did it kind of, pre-baked this a little bit, so we didn't have to wait for the deployment. But you'll see the topology of the deployment. This is the user clicking into the deployment of the admin or whoever, admins and users could potentially both have access to this. And there may be various reasons why each one would go in. But essentially at the end of the day, you can click on your machines, take your day two actions, and go and do stuff with the deployment and the machine. So you can take deployment level actions as well as take workload actions. Okay. And then we also get some other things like pricing we get over from operations manager, so we can see our daily pricing here, as well as monitor. We get some KPI metrics from ops on each resource that got deployed. So we just look at CPU, memory, disk, and network, as well as alerts that come over. There shouldn't be any alerts here, but there might be some inactive ones. No, there's not any yet. So, but if there weren't any alerts, then they would show up, and then as well as optimization opportunities. So earlier when I was talking about right sizing and sort of making sure your deployments are the right size, and things like that, for either better performance or to deal with maybe waste, then we can look at the recommendations here. Okay, real quick before I move on to the operations side, before Tim moves on to the demo operations, let me just show you real quick the template that actually got us there. So one thing that we do is we actually have IEC templates. Basically, they're YAML based, so it's a common language, right, that's used for scripting infrastructure. And then also these can be source controlled in Git, so you can make changes to them in Git, and it syncs down to our tool. And then also you can version control these right from here, and then publish them into the catalog, or work with them in an IDE. You could download these, upload this kind of stuff, and everything else. We do have a code approach. You can also go into properties and click on an object and work in a low code approach. So if you wanted to, hey, I don't want to mess with YAML, I just want to go in and do things through a UI, that capability is there as well. So I can interact with the deployment or with the, I'm sorry, not the deployment, but the template through a code-based approach or properties, kind of just more of a UI approach. The code does have some nice, the designer has some nice elements to it, and that there's like a lot of drop-down help, and you can click on things and get a little bit of information, and things like that. And then we have all of our resource types on the left-hand side that we can just drag and drop onto the canvas, and then build everything out. So this is where we built it. One other nice thing you can do is you can test it right from here. So this doesn't actually do the deployment, but it checks for like syntax issues or placement problems. So if it can't really find a place to put it, it's going to tell you, and it's going to give you a chart of why it made that decision. I've used this a lot for making sure that I've got all my abstractions done, like my mappings for network and storage correct, as well as my mappings for network and I'm sorry, for images and flavor sizes or sizes of machines and things like that. Okay, so basically the idea here is that you've got a design template. You create this, you publish it to the catalog, and then you deploy your application through the catalog. Now, the next thing you're probably going to want to do, right, is go and start monitoring this and managing this deployment. So, Tim, I was going to pass it over to you now if you're ready to go, because I know I'm getting up on my time
Vince,
anyway.
Vince, just
Yeah,
before I
sure.
pass over to
Yeah,
Tim, there is a good question that's come in from Keith.
sure.
I thought I'd ask you. He asks, can you leverage these tools much if going to a managed environment such as AVS?
Yeah, so there is supportability for the hyperscalers like AVS, GCVE, and these other hyperscalers. We have provided support to run these in those environments. So that is an option. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, Tim, over to you. Great, we see your screen. Thanks. Well,
Of course, muted again.
all
All
right.
right. So once Vincent has deployed his or put his deployments out there, uh, of course there are a plethora of options for setting up those deployments. But once they're there, we want to make sure we can go ahead and monitor those, make sure that they're holding up the way that they should be. So we have a couple options when we jump into our operations here. We could go directly to that deployment, or we could kind of look at things holistically from our environment. And I just wanted to start here before we go ahead and look at that deployment and really just take a look at our operations and talk to some of those slides that Vincent had shown earlier as well. So I know he mentioned observability, capacity, cost, compliance, and sustainability. And those are the big pillars of our operations across the top of the screen. And this is the launch pad. Anywhere you are within the product, if you click home, this is where it'll bring you back into. And we'll come back to this launch pad in a moment, but the other tab up here I want to show briefly is the multi-cloud overview. And this is just giving us uh, in general, what do we have out there? All of our particular environments, we can look at all of our clouds all at the same time. We can look only vCenters that we're monitoring. We can go things like our VMware Cloud Foundation and really start to look through the environment as we go through. So this just shows us, again, kind of a high level of where things are at. We have our physical data center locations that we've put out there. So we can see our VMware Cloud Foundation looks like it's down there in Virginia. And it will give us then our top objects, our virtual machines, host systems, data stores, all that good stuff, so we know what we have out there total. This overview screen will give us our total capacity for our clusters. We have at this point 0 to out of 2 clusters are running out of capacity. If we look at something like just our vCenters we've managed, we can see that there's some sort of challenges that we have at the moment. There are 3 out of our 22 total clusters that we probably would need to look at if we wanted to look at capacity wise and look into what's going on with that. Will also give us then our total cost of ownership, and we're going to look a little deeper into both capacity and cost here in a moment. Will give us that total cost of ownership as well as potential savings and a realized savings, things that we've already taken advantage of. And at the bottom, we'll get the total object growth trend that we've had. We can see if we're trending up, we're trending down, remaining virtually the same. Looks like we're going down a little bit in our total objects, but that'll help us with a trend. Same thing with our alert trends as well. So that's the multi-cloud overview. Again, just that kind of morning coffee dashboard. You can see what is out there, what do I need to take a look at first, and then each individual section you can jump in and dive in a little deeper. So I'm going to skip over observability for the moment because we're going to talk about that when we actually get into looking at the deployment that Vincent had put out there. But for now, we'll start with our cost. And we can look at costing here, and Vincent showed a little bit around that as far as how much that deployment was going to cost. And we can look at that from a high level as far as our total cost of ownership for an environment, and I'll click on that in a moment. Or we can dive down and look at individual components of any specific deployment as well. Aria Operations does come with a reference cost database, but you can edit this down. You can change this in cost drivers, change things around so that it is more accurate to your particular environment rather than use the reference database that's there. We can look at our cost analysis. We can define rates and pricing if we want to look at that, as well as chargeback and showback as well. That's there. For now, let's go ahead and look at our total cost of ownership, and I'm just going to look at our VMware Cloud Foundation ownership at the moment. So this is a little bit deeper from what we were looking at before in the multi-cloud overview, but this will break down what my total costs are for compute storage, for storage capacity, for direct costs on VMs, things like facilities and maintenance, and all the things you see over here by under these cost drivers. We can look at that by domain as well. And we could also dive down, and there's a list of dashboards you see down here at the bottom right. We could look even closer and dive into those individual components. This is just more of an overview, so it's just giving us the total cost of ownership, as well as our potential savings. So this is things like idle VMs or orphan disks, or anything that's oversized or powered off, as well as anything like our maybe too many VM snapshots or maybe old VM snapshots we could go in and delete. And we can see that then by our domain as well, where we potentially have some work we could do in order to downsize some things or turn some things off in order to save some money. And then lastly, our realized savings, so anything we already have turned off or maybe turned off some idle VMs or reclaimed some orphan disks. Maybe we've right-sized some VMs that might have been a little oversized at one point. So if I scroll back up here, we can see in the right corner of each of these widgets, here's our total cost of ownership. In the potential savings, here's how much money we could be saving, and this is monthly, as well as how much we're doing at the moment or what we have done already in order to cut those costs down. So in order to do that, in order to take advantage of our potential savings, there's two ways we could do that, and that would be either looking at capacity or cost. Obviously, capacity is tied to cost in the sense that if we have some things out there that are not properly sized, that's going to cost us more money. If we right size those, we know that we're taking advantage of the resources as we need to. Or if we reclaim, obviously that helps with both capacity and cost as well, if there's some things we need to reclaim. For the moment, we'll just look at overall capacity, and this will give us in this particular data center that we're looking at, letting us know we're already at the point where we're out of CPU and looks like probably memory as well. And this will give us what our historical demand has been and then what our forecasted demand has been. So we can see at this point what our projection is and our usable capacity. It looks like our demand is already exceeding our usable capacity. So something we definitely want to take a look at. And this will give us our historical and then start projecting that out. And so we can see there's a little bit of a line right here. And to the right of that line is our projection. Here's what we think is going to happen. We notice it kind of jumps around, up and down as we look through, but it says our operation is using that machine learning to say, well, this is what we think is going to it's going to stay in this range based on our historical projections that we've already had. And again, we could look at that from CPU, memory, or disk space as well to see if there's anything we're running out of. And this will also let us know at the top, if I look at our tile, will let us know it's not optimized. So there's some optimization we could look at, potentially moving things around a little bit in order to make it functional a little more properly. Let us know that in this particular data center, here's how much of our cost savings we have. And if we want to take a look at that cost savings, again, we talked about there are two ways we can do that. We can look at that through capacity, or we can look, right sizing or reclamation. So if I look at, just for example here, our right sizing, we can then see our oversized VMs, if there's any undersized VMs. So it looks like we don't have any undersized at the moment, but there is, I believe, one oversized VM here. And so we could start right sizing this a little bit. We could always just resize this directly. We can see right now we've allocated 4 vCPUs and we're recommended here at 2 vCPUs. So we're recommended to half the amount of vCPUs we have out there. So we could right size that directly. We could exclude this and say, no, I don't want to change that. Don't ever calculate this when we're looking at right sizing or oversized VMs. Or I can schedule this for the future as well. If there's any sort of change windows or anything like that, we can create a job and say, a specific time frame we want this to be resized in order to take advantage of that. And reclamation works the same way. Instead of just this is right sizing, but in reclamation it would just be anything we wanted to do with idle VMs, if we want to turn them off, or if we have powered off VMs we want to delete. Same thing, we can delete them, or we can schedule those actions going forward as well. Going back to our home here, Vincent talked a little bit around compliance. So there's a lot of compliance things we could do, a lot of different guides and regulatory benchmarks we could follow. We have all of those installed in CIS and FISMA, HIPAA. If we click on any of these, we can see what the actual control set is. So for all the objects, we can see what exactly are we looking to kind of monitor or maintain here. So we can look through our control sets, or we can look at those individually and say, all right, is there a specific area or a specific benchmark that we're not compliant with? So if I click on our VMware Cloud Foundation, we can see the various security guides we have that are following vSphere, vSAN, NSXT, as well as below our regulatory benchmarks, our regular benchmarks there. And we could also change these. We can make these custom. So we can use, for example, we could start with our FISMA security standard down here, and we could edit that and change that into something that we wanted to, any sort of custom benchmarks you wanted to apply. So you can add that directly in here as well. So it doesn't have to be only, for example, the vSphere security guide. If you wanted a little tighter environment, you could always change that, add some custom compliance as well. And lastly, just to talk about briefly, real quickly here, our sustainability that Vincent had mentioned, and this will give us a green score, and that's something that VMware has devised internally. Basically, just a number to shoot for. It lets you know how green you are and how far you are along on that sustainability journey. So we can look at our overall organization. We can dive into individual data centers, and we'll change that green score as well. Within here, there's also letting us know how that green score is calculated and the weightings on certain things. So the green score is made up of 3 components, which in turn is made up of a few components as well: green supply, lean operations, clean demand. And this takes a look at a lot of things like power. It's going to look at how efficiently you're using the resource, utilizing the resources that you have. It's going to go in here below that clean demand, lean operations, green supply. What level of virtualization do you have? Is there certain things? Again, we looked at reclamation or right sizing. How many oversized VMs? How many idle VMs? Of course, that will affect our demand if we're using more VMs we have powered on, or if we have idle VMs we're not using but still powered on. We're utilizing that energy in order to run those. So when we don't specifically, or don't necessarily need to have those there. Again, level of virtualization as well as power source, so we can put in various power sources and then put our percentage of our reliance on those power sources, and looking at hardware efficiency. How this is mainly around, do we have newer hardware? Is it older hardware? How quickly is that aging out? The idea here being that newer hardware should be more efficient. So that's just looking at the green score and sustainability. Again, I mentioned you can dive into each individual data center to get that as well, and will let us know how much we're consuming, how much we're our carbon footprint, and the overall impact on the environment. So I think that's the last piece I really wanted to show as far as the pillars of Aria operations. Now that was looking at everything. You could see there was in a few of those screens we could switch between our various cloud accounts. We could go between just our vCenters or our VMware Cloud Foundation, or maybe our VMC and AWS, so on and so forth. If we wanted to look at those individual pieces instead of the environment as a whole, we can use this infrastructure piece down here to look at, say, anything coming from vSphere or just vSAN, or we could say our various VMware clouds. If we wanted to look at only that, we can click on that, and now we'll get the same kind of things we're looking at: compliance, cost, operations, as well as a few individual pieces like our workload domain or our management domain. We can look at the performance for each piece. So this will only include our vSphere, or I'm sorry, our VCF environment, and it breaks it down further, but has the same kind of things that we were looking at: capacity and right sizing, all of that, with an addition of looking at our SDDC manager, or looking at overall our VCF operations and how is that maintaining our availability, our virtual machines, our passwords, certificates, and services. We can switch between domains here and really kind of start to look at our availability of just our VCF deployment. Now, if we wanted to look at that deployment that Vincent had put out there already, we can just simply type in here an object type, or I could just go to the object directly, but I'm going to pick deployment. And then this was the shopping cart, the VCF with NSX shopping cart deployment. So once Vincent has got it out there and he's got it deployed, we can then start monitoring. And this will show us then all of the pieces that are with that particular deployment. You can see there are four virtual machines. We've got 3 that are using Linux OS. We've got some MySQL out there, as well as some Apache HTTP. And really just look at, is the deployment healthy, number one? Looks like at the moment that it is. We get a little bit around our price down here as well. Vincent kind of showed that and how that pricing worked within automation. But now we can look at that deployment price as well directly from here. We can also look at that deployment topologically here. So we can see our shopping cart app. We know it's part of that MOAD VCF NSX blueprint, as well as the project that is there. And we can look at each individual piece as well. So if we open it up here, we see all of our virtual machines. If we look at, say, one of those virtual machines, okay, there's our Linux OS we already knew about. And there is then our MySQL. So this is our database that is working for this shopping cart application we have. Of course, we could go further into our data store if we wanted to, if we're having any sort of storage challenges. We could always do that as well. But with this then comes the ability to look directly into some of those things that are running there. So if we're having any sort of challenges, say, with our database, with that MySQL server that's there, we can look at this and say, all right, let's look at our connection count, or we can look at deadlocks or buffer pools, or if there's any sort of lock weights that are currently going on with that, or anything on the performance I/O of that particular database. So we can really dive into this fairly far, depending on what the challenges is that we want to look at. If we did have any sort of challenges, we can also use the troubleshooting workbench, and that was just at the top. I just click troubleshoot, and it will bring in as our context that this deployment that Vincent put out there, right? So we're looking at our shopping cart app and seeing if there's anything that's been changing lately. And this is broken down into events. So anything that kind of happened that might set off some sort of alert. Looks like there was some DRS migration recently. But this also could be anything that breaks any sort of a dynamic threshold, a threshold that is set by our operations. Anytime a metric might breach that, will be considered an event. We can look at our property changes. So there have been some version changes that looks like on some of our remote collectors there. So anytime there is any sort of property change, that will show up here. We could always look into that further, as well as anomalous metrics. And anomalous metrics is different than an event in the standpoint that it is really something that is changing the metric that we're looking at in a fairly drastic manner. So not just breaching a threshold, but if you look at these, some of these metrics were before, our effective limit, for example, on memory was up here, and now that dropped down, and so our effective memory is lower. So that drastically changed the overall average of that particular metric. So a little different than an event in that case. Of course, we could change our time range for however long we want to look at this. We could also change our scope of this, and I can, right now this is our scope. We're looking at the virtual machines and as well as the project and the blueprint, but we could add additional objects into our scope, and everything we kind of expand here is now going to be added into that scope. So we've set more of a custom scope, and now we can see all of that information if we looked in here as well. Of course, there's also the spot where we could look at any of our logs that are being collected, or logs from any of the objects within this deployment. So let us know, if there's any sort of log we need to focus on specifically for that sort of last mile root cause analysis kind of thing. So that's the troubleshooting workbench using a bit of AIML to kind of put all these together, put this deployment together, and give us overall what is the health or what is the status of that deployment, as well as look into it if we need any to look any challenge areas. So that's all I wanted to go through today. I know we got about 10 minutes left, so I wanted to we'll open up to any questions for either myself or Vincent, and we can answer those if there are any sort of questions. Are there many questions that have come in at all?
There is a couple, Tim. Yes, there's a couple of questions in the queue, and I'll read them out here in a moment. Before I jump to those, we do have a poll question that we'd love to ask the audience, those who are joining us live. And if you don't mind, I'm going to just launch the poll first, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. So I'm just going to bring up the poll right now. So those who are on here live, you should see the question. How many of you are automating and managing workloads and resources using a self-service methodology today? So yes, no, or unsure. So we're seeing many of you answering the poll. Thank you for doing that. We're seeing about 50% saying yes, or some are unsure. But I'll just give you another few seconds here to finish that up. So right now we're yes, 36%, no, 18%, and not sure, 45%. So they might not have full visibility if you are doing self-service methodology, or what does it mean doing self-service methodology? So it could be open for interpretation question. But it looks like the yes is 36%, 45% not sure. All right, so I'll end that poll, and I do have two questions here. If everybody can see that, you can. I was sharing out the poll so folks can see it there. And there's two questions. It's really regarding integrations with VRA or Aria automation. So the first one is, when will a VRA receive sort of stronger integrations with VROps and Tanzu?
Vincent, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sorry, just trying to get off all my mutes here. Yeah. So yeah, good question. So with operations manager right now, we have quite a bit that we've done with the integration in the last couple of years. One, there are out-of-the-box dashboards for VRA, the deployments of VRA, costing for the VRA pieces. You can see projects, and a lot of info from automation gets over into ops for visualization. Also, a few years ago, one thing we worked on was closed loop integration, meaning that when we have that integration in there, ops and auto sort of work together to find the right place for that workload. So operations manager can take that workload and continue to move it based upon performance needs, as well as any kind of policy or business intent. So there is that piece, and we've been putting more and more data from ops into VRA as well. So if you notice, like in some of the deployment tabs now, within the last few releases, we've had that optimized section, that health of the deployment in there. That's probably been in there for about a year, maybe a little longer. But there's those kind of things that we've put in there to and even there's a sort of a little dashboard now on the cloud zones. So there's various things that we do get. But of course, are we looking at more integration in the future? Yes, for sure. There's quite a there's as we sort of look at how we are moving forward, you'll see that these two products will definitely be tighter integrated. We moved a lot of the logs capabilities into ops as well. So there's better integration with our logs tools. As far as Tanzu goes, currently we still have the TMC integration, I believe, So like if you deploy something from a template and it deploys a TKG cluster, let's say, for instance, then you should still be able to see that in TMC through that integration. I have not heard if that's definitively, going to be there in future release or not, but right now I think we're kind of status quo on that as far as I know. Um, and other pieces. So, also Salt now is over on the Tanzu side. We are looking at open source. There are some things we're looking from an integration standpoint with that as well going forward. So I think that's probably all I know at this point around those two pieces. But like I said, I mean, there definitely is a lot of roadmap there. So, if you have an account team or someone and you want to get a roadmap session, then I would definitely encourage that just because, yeah, we do have some things coming up that, should provide a more unified, integrated, collaborated cloud between all these tools. Yeah, that's definitely a big focus for us this year
Okay.
and next year.
Yeah, and along the same lines, a sort of similar question is Git integration. Do you know anything in the works to provide more of a real Git integration potentially, again with VRA or any of the stack?
Yeah, definitely. That's something we have been revisiting. We do have some initiatives right now to expand out the integration with Git and automation. We probably won't see that and actually manifest itself in the product till potentially next year, but it could be something we might see this year. I'd probably have to go back and look and see where we're at. But yeah, we are looking at expanding out the capability to do various type of syncing activities depending upon what's happening. So yeah, stay tuned for that. There is more coming on that.
All right, good. Thank you. We've got 2 minutes left here. If anybody wants to submit a question, please go ahead. We've got just a minute or two left here. That's the only other questions. There's no other questions currently in the queue. But if anybody wants to pop one in, just you've got another minute here if you'd like. If you miss your chance, you please reach out to us. This is the team that are available. We're very proud to have them available, and they're here to help. So please reach out to your representative here with us, and we're here to help you automate and move to that self-serve cloud operating model. All right, so I think we'll wrap it up for the day. Thank you, Vincent, and thank you, Tim, for attending today and helping us with these questions and the presentation. Really appreciate it. We'll sign off, and we hope everybody has a good day, good evening, and thank you again. We'll see you hopefully next in our next webinar series coming up every Wednesday. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.